All right, I want to welcome everybody here. So we have a small turnout, but people might be trickling in as they figure out how to get in. Um, Today, we are going to be joining in on a conversation that is going to talk a little bit about vai meaning water. This is part of our Ike Kaiaulu Talk Story series, which we started in September of 2020, right on the edge of our COVID pandemic, and it's blossomed and grown, and I think a lot of people are enjoying not only showing up and talking story, but also watching the videos that have been recorded at a later time. So I'm excited to be able to welcome all of you that are here today, and also the people that are going to join us afterwards in the video watching. So Ike Kaiaulu is our, quote, service learning program at Windward Community College, and I am the director, Olaupoko. And yeah, it's a really neat series, and it is held every month on the second Friday of every month. And our next talk story session, the last one of this semester, is April 8th, where we will be talking to the people over at Waikalua Fish Pond, Herb Lee, and then also one of our retired faculty, Floyd McCoy, who's going to be adding in his 2 cents about the fish pond and the phenomenon of the fish pond. So I'm really looking forward to that next month. So today we are talking to Project Director Nalani Kāne, who is from Hui o Olaupoko, and we are going to be addressing vai. And I think that this idea of vai and vai is a timely one, partly because of all the things that have been happening with our vai here on the island. And in looking at, the word vai means fresh water. Vai means wealth or richness. And so it's kind of cool to think about the fact that within the word for wealth and richness is this word fresh water or vai. So we're going to be talking about vai and hui o olaupoko and some of the opportunities and things that are happening there with hui o olaupoko. So I'll turn it over real quick to our guest, our community partner, Nalani Kāne.
Aloha, everyone. Thanks so much for having me on today. I'll just do a quick intro before I share screen and dive into my presentation. But do feel free to chat or raise your hand and stop me with questions at any time during the presentation. And I hope you guys can gain something out of today as well. So my name is Nalani Kāne. I am born and raised in Olaupoko, and I've been working with Hui o Olaupoko for about 13 years now. So it's a position that I was really happy to find and fall into pretty early in my conservation and ecosystem work, and the excitement that I would get to work within my community and to do outreach to youth in the community in the area that I grew up in, and that gave me kind of the bug for doing ecosystem work. So I'm really happy to have had such a long career working and living in Olaupoko, and I kind of grew up in Kailua and Kahalu'u. My parents are still in Kahalu'u, and I've lived in Waimanalo, and now settling with my husband and my young daughter in Olamana area. I'm gonna go ahead and share a presentation. So Hui o Olaupoko is a nonprofit organization that, like I said, and like the name describes, is based in the olaupoko region. We have a pretty long history as an organization, even though we were only established as a nonprofit in 2008. Before that, our origins come from the Kailua Bay Advisory Council that was formed in the mid-1990s. So that entity, the Kailua Bay Advisory Council, was a group of organizations that came together to bring a lawsuit against the city and county for illegal wastewater discharge from the Aikahi wastewater treatment plant. And they were discharging water into Kailua and Kaneohe Bays. So the organizations that you see listed, like Save Our Bays and Beaches, White Owls and Friends, those groups brought the lawsuit against city and county. And with the money that was won in the lawsuit, the consent decree, our organization, our parent organization, Kailua Bay Advisory Council, was able to divvy out money to different researchers to do water quality monitoring and also establish some citizen science type water quality work. But when that money was expended and it had been given out in smaller grants to other entities and other community organizations, the board didn't want to just fold and go away. They actually wanted to expand the focus to focus on all of olaupoko. So we decided to incorporate, become a nonprofit. And that's how we kind of got the name changed and Kuio olaupoko came into being. And I joined the organization shortly thereafter. So in the fall of 2008, I came on board as the outreach coordinator. So when I talk about watersheds and ahupua'a work, I think in Hawaii, we have a pretty good understanding of what a watershed and what an ahupua'a is. When I talk with a lot of younger kids and school groups that come out, they take the word very literally. What is a watershed? And I like to ask them in using both terms. What's a watershed? What's an ahupua'a? Because they might recognize ahupua'a before they recognize the word watershed. So they take it very literally. It's a shed that holds water. They're thinking water catchment. And it really is that idea of water catchment. It's a basin. It's all the slopes that run into a basin and run into the streams. And Hawaii, we have such beautiful images where you can see the entire watershed. Whereas you think of watersheds, the Mississippi watershed on the continent is massive. You can't see end to end. And it's a really hard concept for some people on the continent to understand. So we have this beautiful example, and I think a lot better understanding of everything that comes into play within our watersheds. So for our organization, our main focus are the watersheds of the olaupoko moku. They drain into the three bays of Waimanalo, Kailua, and Kaneohe. And there's many sub-watersheds. So for our organization and the work that we do, the different grants that we write, proposals that we write, we've divided the area up into 4 regions that have distinct characteristics. So Waimanalo itself would be a region because of the bay there, and also because of the agricultural type characteristics of that area. Kailua is another region because of Kailua Bay. And then we also have the 2 regions of Kaneohe Bay. So we divide Kaneohe up into Southern Kaneohe and Northern Kaneohe regions because of the really distinct characteristics of the really heavily urbanized area of Southern Kaneohe, and that runs to Kealohi Point at He'eia, and then the Northern Kaneohe regions, which are much more rural and agricultural. So within those are the main watersheds, and then sub-watersheds are the smaller valleys that might have tributaries like smaller streams that feed into other larger streams. So larger stream being He'eia, and then you have a sub-watershed like Iole Ka'a. So for each of these watersheds, we have stream systems, and unfortunately, because we have such narrow stream systems, it doesn't provide a lot of time for our waters to be infiltrated into the ground when there is a rainstorm. It doesn't provide a lot of time for water to be filtered in a natural way. And so when we have big rainstorms, the rains act like a broom that sweep water, sweep pollutants right off of our hardscapes and our landscapes out into our streams and out into the oceans. And because of that, most of the streams in olaupoko don't meet federal water quality standards. That's really sad to think about when we think of everything that's going on in the news today and how important fresh water is to sustaining ourselves, sustaining the environment, our agricultural practices, and all of the things that we rely on for fresh water, even other ecosystems and other animals. It can have impacts to recreation, economy, environment, human health, all of those things if we're not doing the right things on our landscape to impact the health. And when I think of vai, I think of health, wealth, abundance, vitality, all of those words, and that comes to mind thinking about the difference between polluted water and fresh water. So as I like to think of, we're all part of a watershed, we're all part of the problem, we're all part of the solution. So I'm sure all of us do something on a daily basis that can be considered sustainable or a good practice for the environment, but there's also things that we do that contribute to problems and things we can't necessarily control. Driving our cars around can contribute in ways. So we're all part of the problem when it comes to water quality, but we can all be part of the problem when it comes to improvements in that system. So all of the watersheds and subwatersheds in this region, most of them are listed, like we said, as impaired waterways. So this is an interesting map that shows what some of those streams have been listed for when it comes to pollutants for those areas. And if a stream isn't highlighted, like some of the ones in the northern Kaneohe region, we have Hakipu'u, those streams up there, and some in the Waimanalo region as well. Those areas haven't been evaluated yet. So not to say that they don't have pollutant issues, because I'm sure we've got some turbidity and runoff just from natural sources of erosion in those areas. But this is an interesting thing to look at when we think of pollutants. So as an example, some areas in Waimanalo, you've got nutrients and turbidity. So those can be from sources like agricultural practices, from livestock. Those nutrients from the animals can contribute to the nutrient levels that we see in the stream. Turbidity can be from farming practices, or it can be from natural areas of erosion, like an erosion scar that you see up on a mountaintop. But then when we look into other areas, like the pink portions down here in our Kaneohe region, this stream is listed for dieldrin, and dieldrin is an insecticide that was used heavily in, I believe, the 60s and 70s, maybe into the 80s. And that was the green treated termite wood. So that green color is dieldrin. And we were seeing that in our waterways. So water, like the dieldrin leaching out of homes, and it really coincides with a lot of the booming urbanization in the Kaneohe area. I mean, the house I'm in now, it was built in the 60s, so I'm sure we've got plenty of dieldrin in our wood here too. It's something that, it's a practice that we did, and unfortunately it's something that we're still seeing in waterways sometimes. So there can be really long-lasting impacts to some of our practices. My cursor is not moving forward. There we go. So these are a little quiz for you guys, if you could name all of the watersheds and the subwatersheds. Even more points if you can put them all on the right place on the map. It's a tricky one for some of the smaller ones, like Waianu. There's some small regions in there. So when I talk about water and the work that olaupoko incorporates into our landscapes, one of the main focuses for us is allowing the water a chance to be captured and infiltrated, whether it's infiltrated by plants or just by a slow movement across grass and landscape. Having infiltration back into our groundwater in Hawaii is so very important to our aquifers and our drinking water in Hawaii where we get it. When we have natural ground cover, we've got 25% deep infiltration of water. So 25% of a rainfall event, that's a quarter of the water going down into the areas. So a reason why forested ecosystems, our upland ecosystems, Mauka areas are so important to our aquifers and our watersheds, the ahupua'a. A lot goes into evapotranspiration, so that's water lost through the trees, through the leaves, a very natural process. When we move into regions of more 50% impervious cover, so 50% of the landscape being built up, concrete, channelized, asphalt, parking lots, all of those things, you're moving down into about 15% infiltration into the ground. So that's only 15% chance for water to reestablish and to infiltrate back into the aquifer. And a point that I bring up sometimes when working with our kids, you ask everybody who has a Brita filter, like who filters their water, uses some charcoal. That's what our aquifers and that's what our ground, our lava rock systems do for the water. They filter the water out. So when it goes down into our aquifers, it's healthier water. And if it can go through a forested ecosystem, that's even more filtration that can happen because plants and a lot of native plants are known to uptake pollutants as well. So when you get down to about 50% impervious cover, you have a very small amount of water that's able to penetrate deeply into the ground. So this map is a pretty stark visual of the impervious cover in the olaupoko region. So red is impervious cover. Red is concretes, roofs, streets, parking lots, and you've got pretty high rates of impervious cover in Kailua, Ka'alepulu, and Kaneohe along the Keahala stream. So that's right around the same region as Windward Community College, through the industrial area of Windward Mall. And those areas have about 50% cover, could possibly be even higher now because this map was created about 10 years ago. So we're moving into like maybe the 5 to 10% or 5 to 15% of rainfall events being able to infiltrate into the ground. And as much as I hate this image, I love this image because I think it really drives home the point of why restoration practices and bringing green spaces back into our urban areas and trying to incorporate some types of green design in the urban areas are really important. We have a lot of opportunities in the upper regions and the northern Kaneohe regions and Waimanalo regions to do water quality or stream restoration type of work, but those are wonderful projects to do, but you don't have the same type of pollutants coming out of those areas as you do in the urban areas. So our organization is beginning to focus back on the urban areas and trying to bring green spaces back into the urban areas. And we do that through work that we call stormwater management, or LID, it's low impact design, or low impact retrofit. So we can go in and redesign a parking lot so it has better use and better flow of the water that is coming off of those areas. And I'll touch a little bit more on these two types of projects, but these are the main areas that our organization works in. We do stormwater management. We also do watershed restoration work. So that would be in the more rural areas working along restoring a stream system and the riparian areas of the stream. I have some examples of both of those types of work that we're working on, but I want to first talk more about the urban spaces and how we're able to bring the green design back in. I'll pause really quick. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I wondered before you go on if we could ask a little bit from each person as to what they wanted to maybe hear about, if they know of any projects, that kind of thing, or unless you want to save that for later.
No, I'd love to hear if anyone has questions or anything they're curious about and would like me to touch on, or just what Vai and Vai means to you guys.
Why don't we start with Andrew, since he was here first?
Well, I want to like learn more about like ways that we can help ourselves, you know.
That's a good one. Little things that we can do that will help this situation. I never thought about how much concrete. I never thought about this actually, and concrete. You know what? Before you go on, my sister-in-law is from Maui, and she came to Honolulu, and I think I was just sitting one day, and I go, oh, I smell rain. And she goes, what do you mean you smell rain? I don't smell rain. And then I went, no, I can smell it, it's coming. And then the rain is coming. And she said, no, that smells like concrete. And I was like, what? I mean, it smells like concrete. So her version of rain in Hana smelled very different than my version of rain in Honolulu. And I just never really thought about that, water and its smell. But it was the concrete I was smelling.
I can imagine that. I can imagine that smell. We're almost smelling the steam off of the concrete and the asphalt.
Yeah, and I never really thought. I just, oh no, that's the smell of rain in Honolulu. That's the smell of rain.
Yeah.
Interesting. Even.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Puna, did you have any comments about Vai, or any projects or water or anything? Oh, you got to unmute.
I'm so interested because, you know, here on Kauai, the watersheds and protecting our water has been an issue, ongoing issue, and it's going to continue. So I really like hearing what you have to say, and the project, how you are approaching it. It's very helpful and serves as a means. I mean, you know, thanks to Kumu Noi, we have this opportunity to not just hear you, but to understand your way of addressing. I'm from Kailua. I know exactly where you're talking, and you know, have been a part of the marsh, and so to see so much work being done in a positive manner is really great to know. My son has a home that's right there in Enchanted Lake. So, you know, they paddle canoes from there out into the ocean and back and forth. But I will tell you just one thing. I'm sorry for taking up this much time, but my dad was really eccentric back in the day. And I think it was in the during Mayor Fossey's time, but he protested, we as children, in his boat outside Mokapu because of the dumping. And he had said he tried to say, you know, eventually Kailua Bay would, all the papa'a, all the coral, you're so young, you guys are young, but there used to be a natural papa'a that ran across, that protected Kailua Beach and Bay, and he, back in the day, protested with us, all his children, against the dumping, that was going on. And he said, there used to be a huge boat ramp. So now I'm really dating myself. But there used to be a boat ramp that extended out to maybe a football field away from Popoia Island, Flat Island, you guys know it as. And because of the dumping, gradually over, I would say maybe over 8 years, the coral papa that protected started to disappear, literally disappear. And my dad considered that was our ice box, that was what fed all of us. And so he did many things, but the one that I remember most was within my growing up years, that whole place changed. And that area, because of the dumping, of course, I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know what I'm saying. It's just the amount of limu that used to come to the beach or be there on the beach. We had the best limu kohu in Kailua Bay. Can you believe that? The best. And here I live on Kauai, and we have the best in Anahola, but it's because of how it was being cared for by the kupuna, and so my dad was one of those people. And now you can't find limu in Kailua Bay. I mean, there's so many things that you can't find, and especially the coral reefs that were there. I know that they have pictures of them, but you never had to really worry about sharks or any of those things. We swam and went between the islands as children because it was so protected. And now none of that exists. There's no coral that you can see outside of, up above the waters. There's none. It's become, it was so affected. And in his protest, I mean, there's eons of stuff that he wrote about or brought attention to, and that time, because he said, this is going to happen first, this will happen second, this will happen third, and the only time that people are going to be grumbling about it is when it affects them directly. And so much of the land that used to extend out into the ocean, especially in Lani Kai, that posh area, has homes right up until to the baseline, but not even 5 feet away, have all washed away. And so it was only with that happening that there was an effort, protest to address it. So I'm so thankful to be able to hear you and to know that these things are being addressed. Of course, this is so many years later, but at least we are being educated to know how, and know what to look for, how to do this, so that we can really be able to hold on to what we have left.
Yeah, it's so sad to think about how it used to be, and you hear all of these stories. I agree with you, Puna. It's fabulous that there's somebody that I feel like just in your name of Hui o Olaupoko, that there's a Hui that's checking out and making sure things are okay, with something so vital to the land. So that's awesome. How about you, Lei? Thank you, Puna, for that.
Thank
How about
you.
you, Lei? Do you have any comments or thing you want her to touch on today?
Curious about more about where she was going with it, like with the like specifics on how to do it. I don't know what they're doing, but like I know for me, like it is devastating when you hear it, but what's interesting about this is I don't know the little details. So like I didn't know that how much water permeated in the ground, how much didn't. And so I'm learning a lot, and I'm just digesting all of this information, and I'm really grateful. So, and I'm hoping, even though I don't live back home, I can apply it towards where I live in rural upstate New York. Like I even had concerns with my neighbor. He built his home, and we were very rural, and he didn't tell us. He just built this home, and where our water's in a well. So I am curious how that all works, and to make sure that our water's still good. And we have agriculture near us, farms with cows and stuff. So I am very curious about this, and ways I could help when I do go home, and then here and where I live. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for joining us from all over. And I'll be sure to touch on some individual practices and things that are really applicable no matter where you live. But I wanted to just respond to Puna really quick, what you said about the icebox, and that the oceans and our nearshore ecosystems being the icebox. I think that again ties back to the vai, the wealth and the health of our waters, and those nearshore areas depend so much on our freshwater and the estuary ecosystems. And of course, the dumping into the bay contributes, sea level rise contributes to all of the issues you were talking about. When I was growing up in Kailua, you could walk around the point from Kailua into Lanikai, into Ka'ohao, and you can't do that nowadays. But the change in our freshwater systems leading into Ka'elepulu and out past Buzzes now, down that channel, the changes in that freshwater system, I'm sure, have really impacted the health of the bay as well, and the abundance of fish there, because Ka'elepulu was a fish pond. It was a major estuary for Kailua Bay. And I have some really cool photos to show on that. So just some really quick photos to give you guys a visual image of the two types of work. So the upper three photos are Upper He'eia stream on one of our stream restoration, our ecosystem restoration projects, where we were working to remove invasive species and push back some of the howl bush away from the stream and address erosion there, installing native plants along the edge so we can have a healthy open stream system in the upper regions of the stream. There are o'opu in this stream, so giving them passage all the way from Mauka to Makai was a really important part of the work that we did in the upper regions, as well as the estuary work that we're undertaking today. And then our Popoia Street low impact project is essentially the Buzzes parking lot. It's an overflow parking area for Kailua Beach Park. And this was one of our low impact design and low impact retrofit projects to redesign the parking lot there to better infiltrate water with the pavers and the native plants. I have some more photos on those in a minute, but when I think of vai and how we can bring those into an urban setting, I think of kipuka, those beautiful spaces in the lava flows that help to restore the lava flows around it, provide a safe haven for the species of plants and birds and insects until there's opportunities to go out and repopulate the surrounding areas. So when we create these urban areas, and bringing green spaces back into the urban areas, I like to think of them as tiny little kipuka, places for our native plants to thrive, hopefully for the insects to thrive, but also for people to go and to learn and to thrive as well, whether it's part of a park that we can provide native plants within the park and some passive education, being able to walk through an area and see signage that will identify a native plant so you can see how it grows. You're like, oh, what's that? I like the way that grows. And it's got a plant sign. So you know what you can look for, what you can ask for at the nursery, or signage that talks about why the project was installed and how it was installed. So some of the work that we've undertaken is to implement rain gardens and other projects like the parking lot retrofit, where we're able to capture water from roofs and from roadways into these kind of vegetated basins. It's almost like a large bathtub being dug into the ground, and it's sized appropriately for the roof or for the area that it's catching water off of. So that bathtub, that basin will fill with water. The native plants that are in there will help to uptake the water, and then water is given a chance to soak and to permeate into the ground. And we do it in a way that allows for the water to drain within about 36 hours. So you don't want a mosquito pond. You want somewhere where the water is going to drain out. So we've developed a manual. It's the Hawaii Residential Rain Garden Manual. And this is available for download on our website. And there should also be, I believe, 2 copies in all of the public libraries across the state as well. So rain gardens, if you live in an individual home site, a private home site, a rain garden is a really practical thing to do to capture water and allow the water to infiltrate into your green spaces, if you've got the space to do one of those. Another thing that I tell people, if maybe this seems like a little bit too much maintenance, there's a really easy fix. And I love to chase rainstorms. So when it's raining, I love to go out to our project sites and see what our projects are doing and see how the stream is acting and learn what's happening. Because most of the time when it's raining, everyone wants to go hide and like wait out the rain. I'm out there, I want to see what's happening. So I love going around and looking at people's houses when it's raining to see how the water is acting on their property. And if you guys are looking to implement little things like that, I really suggest you get out there when it's raining next time and look at if your house has gutters. Go and see where your downspouts are going. Chances are the kind of default for installation sometimes is that the downspouts go directly onto your driveway. And what happens when they go onto the driveway? They're going to pick up the hydrocarbons, the oils, the brake dust, all of those things. And they're going to go right down your driveway, right into the storm drain, out into the stream and out into the ocean. And that's a super, super easy 50-cent fix at the hardware store. You buy the little L-shaped elbow, maybe an extension if you need to, and a simple fix can turn that downspout off of your driveway and into the grass nearby. So something as simple as that is going to get that much more water flowing. And if you did that for every spot on your property where you've got a downspout, then you could potentially catch all of the water that's coming off of your areas. Another easy thing to do for water catchment and reuse is rain barrels. If you have potted plants in your garden, then you can get 50-gallon drums and get your downspouts to go into the rain barrels. And I think that's something that we're starting to see a lot more of. And you water your plants in your garden from those rain barrels. So at the community college, at Winter Community College, we have we did a really large installation there that captured water from 18,000 square feet of roof and roadway. And so this was 3 large basins of water and over 2,000 plants initially, I think 4,000 when we closed out the project. But all of the water coming off of the downspouts are going into basins at the bottom of the downspouts. And so when we talk about 18,000 square feet, you can have a pretty big size basin. But if you think of a typical home size in Hawaii, like the houses that were built in the 60s and 70s, not this crazy duplex monstrosities that take up the whole property that we're seeing today. For a typical smaller home size in Hawaii, you wouldn't have to dig much more than a bathtub size basin in the ground to be able to capture water coming off of the house. And the nice thing about the rain garden manual is that the manual walks you through exactly how to do all of those calculations, how to figure out how much of your roof area is being captured. It walks you through how big you would have to build the basin. And we even give suggestions on shape and plants to put in, depending on if you live in Kaneohe where it rains a bunch, or dry or leeward size. So we tried to really lay it out to be an accessible document for everyone to be able to use. So I like this photo. It really shows how big the site was when we first did installation. And then on the right-hand side with the kalo, you can see in the back there, that white line, and that's perlite. That's a planting and a potting soil media that is in a lot of our potting soil mixes. But what happened was it rained overnight, and that's actually the water level because perlite floats. So it rained overnight and this basin filled up to that line, and within the evening, within the night, it was able to infiltrate and soak into the ground. So it's a neat visual to show how with the rainstorms, those rain gardens will fill and infiltrate and fill and infiltrate. And then, so from a rain garden that can be scaled up, scaled down to home size, or even to urban areas. Larger rain gardens that we've done in the more urban areas, we have some in Kailua that are like right on the corner of Hamakua. There's American Savings Bank and the Safeway there. There's a rain garden on that street corner that captures water off of the parking lot there. And unless you know really what you're looking for, it just looks like landscaping. And that's kind of the beauty of it too. So sometimes we get into larger scale areas and projects where we're restoring or trying to work on infiltrating water from parking lots and from roadways. So this project site, like I touched on before, is part of the City and County Parks Department. It's an overflow parking for Kailua Beach Park. And this project, right along Ka'alepulu Stream, Kailua Beach, Kailua Bay, right on the other side of this bridge here. But when it rained on this site, this was all crushed coral, gravel, backfill, and cars were pulling right up to the very edge of the stream. And when it rained, all this white crushed coral would just plume out. So you can see this big white murky plume, and that's runoff all from this rainstorm. So this is what I say when I like to chase rainstorms. This is what we're going out. Hey, we're gonna do a project here. We wanna do a project here. Let's go check it out. Let's go see what's really happening. And the wall, the retaining wall that you see here is kind of a mix of things. It's containing the stream, but the homes that are off on the left side of this are in a very low spot as well, where a lot of flooding occurs. And so the retaining wall was put in, and then the homeowners were getting flooded. So the homeowners actually came through, created these little scuppers or the drainage alleys. And unfortunately it saves their homes from being flooded, but it lets all those pollutants, any trash that's on that site, right out into the waterway. And within 100 yards, you've got the ocean. So with our work here, we wanted to install these permeable pavers. And the photo with one of our friends working, you can see how there's the gaps in between each of those pavers. So when we get those nice Kailua Bay squalls that come through, there's still an asphalt roadway and a drive aisle, but then the parking stalls are on the pavers. So when we get those squalls that come through, you'll have standing water from a 5-minute rainstorm on the asphalt for a day at least. But the pavers themselves are dry within a couple of hours. The water is soaking down, and infiltrating into the ground. And the plants were meant to be an additional kind of buffer so that if there was more sheet flow of water flowing towards the stream, the plants would help to catch and infiltrate that additional water. But we have such good infiltration through the pavers that the plants are doing more of like a wind catch or catchment of any of the blowing debris. So we get a lot more of like the paper trash getting caught up in the pohinahina and the other native plants that are there. And this project was really impactful for me because that crushed coral fill had so much unseen pollutants in it that when we first planted on this site, we had an oddly dry winter that year, and we had to go down and hand water. So we were hand watering, trying to get all of these little plants established. And what we noticed while we were hand watering was that the ground was hydrophobic. It was repelling water. There was so much oil and hydrocarbons in that soil that the water was literally beating up and running away from the plants. So unless the plant was planted in a depression that it could catch that water, you were just having water run off of the site. It did not want to soak into the ground. And it took probably 4 to 6 months to see just really good, normal looking infiltration on that site. So it was really impactful to see that type of an impact during a restoration project and to be able to see it change. So before I go into kind of our ecosystem scale things, I just want to circle back with you folks, and especially those that were interested in learning more about some little practices at your home sites. I'm happy to touch base with you guys more one-on-one, or really encourage you to go out in your next rainstorm and look at the way that water's flowing. Like some houses don't have downspouts, but you could look at your property and see where your low spots are, because even if you've got a low spot through your property where water typically tends to flow, you can do an infiltration test there and see if you built a rain garden in a low spot, if it would have the right type of infiltration into the ground. And some of those other fixes that I mentioned, are there other things that you guys have thought of, or do you think that some of those fixes could be potentially worked into your properties? I see Andrew nodding.
I'm gonna.
Hi, Lay. Oh, you're on mute now.
Yes, I think I could on some of those. I think for me, we still have to figure out our yard, because we actually have a lot of water pooling at the bottom, and then we have a driveway with rocks. There's no asphalt or anything. It's just rocks. But I think I'm wondering if I could do the garden and also check and see if it is infiltrating down below. And where it's going, because we have a nearby stream, not on our property but across the street, but we get a lot of pulling, like just a pool of water down on the bottom. We live kind of on a hill and it goes in the bottom, so I'm curious about that. So thank you.
How long would you say it tends to be a standing pool of water for?
That one, well, it stays for about a day. It seems like it'll rain and it'll pull up, and then maybe a day after, then it's down.
Okay, that sounds like a potential for a rain garden. You wouldn't want to do it where people are like, oh, I always have standing water over here. That means you don't have good infiltration and it's not a good spot for a rain garden. But what I suggest in those cases is to find out where that water is coming from. And you can do little things, little planter beds along that course of water flow that feeds into it, so that you have more chances for the water to kind of slow down and get infiltrated along the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know we might be a little short on time. Puna, I see you waving. You have something.
I don't, something happened with my computer and I'm not able to see all of the pictures that you were showing, but I lived right there behind Buzz's Steakhouse. That's where I grew up. And so I'm really interested. I'm going to Kailua tonight. I'm going to drive right down there to see what you just talked about. And that rain garden sounds fabulous. It's so practical. It's so ingenious. It's so Hawaiian, by the way. And
Rain gardens really are maybe a scientific version of a lo'i. It's water catchment. It's a retention basin. It's a rain garden. You're taking the water from where it's coming from and giving it a chance either to water your garden and infiltrate, or to do what it needs to do for those plants and then move on in a different course. So it's all a regenerative system. And I think the really cool thing about the project at Buzz's at Popoia Street was that there's, I think 3 houses now that have been developed, rental properties by the same developer. And he, along with Buzz's, was very happy that we were doing the work that we were doing there, and asked for us to even remove some of the parking spaces so that there was an easier access back onto the main road, because people were parking all the way up to the main road. It was really hard to get out. There's a little hill, there's the bridge, cars coming from both directions. So improving that for the business use over there, but the developer saw a beautification of a nearby property, and it was something that he could easily incorporate into his other properties. So while some of our projects might not be like the most impactful way to get pollutants, or like addressing the biggest polluter in that ahupua'a, there are these kind of low-hanging fruits and these really visual projects that are going to stand out to people. And with the components of educational signage, will hopefully be the best educational tools in these urban areas. So while they might not be the most impactful on water quality, they can really help to change people's mindsets when they're presented in the right ways and when they're upkept. Yeah, I'm curious to see what you think of this site.
I'm gonna go see it. I arrived tonight. I'm driving. I'm gonna be in Kailua, and I'm gonna drive right there.
Beautiful.
To see it. Yeah. That's
So
cool. Exactly where we lived, right there. So you're talking about, when you talk about the white, that was what they used instead of gravel. Well, maybe that's what it was gravel, but it was a pasty white stuff that I would say maybe twice in the year they would put on the roadway, because everything washed away, with the rain, everything washed down and rushed into the Ka'elipulu right there. And so I'm smiling when you're talking about it, because I know exactly what you're saying. That was like a cement road without cement, so wow, didn't realize it was doing that kind of damage to our environment. Thank you.
Yeah, and it might have been like some type of a limestone crushed coral type of fill in that area, but once it's combined with the excessive amount of vehicles parking there and parking right up to the edge of the shoreline, you need some type of a setback away from our stream systems so that there can be a natural buffer and a natural border to the streams. And I won't spend too long on our restoration work, but just hit on it a little bit. When I talk about those natural buffers to the stream systems, we need to kind of restore the stream areas, or we call it in the industry riparian areas. So the banks of the stream systems and those areas close to the stream where you can have native plants that stop erosion, or that can help capture water that's flowing in and slow erosion getting into the stream system that causes that turbidity. So for a lot of the stream restoration and the ecosystem restoration work that we've done, it's incorporating the removal of invasive species, replanting with native plants to lessen turbidity in the stream, but also to restore the waterways and the habitat for the fish. So some of the work that we did in Hei'ia Estuary since 2015 was removing about 6 acres of mangrove. And it's an interesting plant because in other parts of the world, mangrove is considered a very protected species. So Gulf Coast states, even other places in the Pacific are actively planting and protecting mangrove ecosystems because they've got these cool, like octopus on tippy toes. They've got prop roots that help to trap the sediment and all of that turbidity coming down that otherwise might end up on our reefs and the nearshore ecosystems. But what's happening in Hawaii, first of all, it does so good of a job that it actually shrinks our stream system. So what Hei'ia stream that was historically 50, 60 feet wide, when we first started doing this work, you could jump across the stream. You could get from one side to the other. And it's created just this kind of peat moss, peat bog, root fill of soil. And having that tangle of soil and other vegetation was impacting the O'opu passage up into the higher reaches of the stream. And the stream system is a fairly intact and healthy, very minimal concrete lined stream system. And the other impacts of mangroves is on our fish ponds. So our neighbors to this project at Paepaeo Hei'ia, they're working on 88 acres of fish pond restoration and a fish pond wall that was totally encompassed in mangrove. And once those little octopus prop roots get into a fish pond wall, they're just destroying and breaking apart the fish pond walls. So we're seeing a lot of those impacts and loss of fish pond walls on south shore of Molokai and what's happening a lot throughout the kind of inner bays and fish ponds around Oahu as well. And Kauai too, the large fish pond there, where they're actively doing mangrove removal. So Hei'ia Estuary has been a really amazing restoration project for us over the years. And as we've removed the invasive species and replanted with natives, we've had a lot of the wetland birds come back in and utilize the area. And the work that's happening with all of the neighbors around there, the lo'i being restored above us at Koko'oiwi, the io, the stilts, love to nest in the lo'i, and then they come down to the estuary and visit us to feed throughout the day. And we also had a lai'ula come in and nest on our project site. So we had a successful nest of 3 fledglings last summer. And so that was really beautiful to see the abundance come back in when we're able to treat and restore our freshwater areas and freshwater ecosystems. And a couple other little places in Kailua, Kaha Community Garden is one of our oldest sites. It was developed in 2007, and this is within a city and county park, right on the Makai side of the Kauai Nui levee. So this is like a mini botanical garden where we've landscaped with native plants. We have vegetation, placards and plant signs, and passive education so that people can wander through and kind of learn about the garden and learn about ways that plants can be incorporated into landscapes. And then Kaha Garden is the red dot right there. And there's the yellow is the channel that runs on the Makai side of the levee, kind of behind the whole urbanized area of Kailua through Hamakua Marsh here, and then out at our Buzzes project and into Kailua Bay. So what Puna said before about Kailua being the ice box, this blue channel never used to be the outlet for Kauai Nui. The outlet for Kauai Nui used to run through Hamakua into Ka'alepulu and out at Kailua Beach Park near Popuia Island. So that was the natural flow of water through this system. And now this yellow system is a dead end at the red square, at the red diamond. It's a dead end system that's being almost entirely fed by the runoff from our urbanized and impervious surfaces. So such an impacted system because of the levee that was installed and how it impacted the hydrology and the water flow of that site. So in the little call out picture, you can see there's the Mokapu Canal that was an Army Corps of Engineers project, and that now drains Kauai Nui and is open to the tidal flow every day. But then this other little dead end of water is what lets out at Kailua Beach Park near Popuia. So this along with the other map of all of our impervious surfaces is an impactful one and really shows how much we've changed the ecosystem. And so if we can do things like installing these gardens or doing little practices on our home sites, we can have individual impacts and hopefully collective impacts that can bring back the health of our waterways and our watersheds as well. A few of our native hibiscus that are at Kaha. So this is my contact info. If you guys are curious to learn more or have individual questions about your home site, please do contact me. We've done a lot of rain garden builds with homeowners, so I'm always happy to come and see sites or look at pictures of sites and help in any way that I can. So feel free to reach out.
So cool to even think. I sound funny. What's wrong with my mic?
You sound fine on my end.
Okay. It totally all of this I've not thought of. And so that's really, really kind of cool to be able to learn so much in just one presentation of things that we interact with all the time. And it just makes you want to fix everything. You just showed me all the things that we need to fix. Why can't we just like connect those two and yeah, all that stuff. And I love that that the watershed is our lo'i. It just makes so much sense. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But the good part is that this video, if you want to share this with other people, will be available on our WCC YouTube channel online. And Nalani has been very, very gracious to offer her her information so you can contact her directly. So that's really awesome. I would love to say, are there any questions? But that would, of course, take us over the top in time. But please do reach out to Nalani or myself if you have other questions or things that you really want to connect with Nalani about or me about. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I want to thank you, Nalani, for all that knowledge. Oh my gosh. I had no idea that you had been with Kuio Olaupoko for 13 years. So I can tell that you've learned so much along the way and have been able to share it with our community. So that's really, really exciting. And I'm glad we were able to connect and talk about chickens. We had a chicken conversation prior to the start. Anyway, all of you, it's so nice to see you. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful day. Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha.
Nice to see you, Maile. 3 minutes.
Aloha. Mahalo.
Take care.
Mahalo.
Mahalo for coming, Puna.
Yeah, ahui ko.
Ahiho.
Get out.
Oh, I better stop recording now.